Hey, what's going on? My name is Scott, and I help to keep police officers alive and thriving. And since I was in law enforcement for so long, I figured I would pass along some information that I learned, sometimes the hard way, particularly when it came to police reports. Now, when I trained officers, one of the first things I tried to tell them was like, look, we just got to get this stuff done. Okay. I know the paperwork is so frustrating. You'd much rather be out there serving warrants, or you're out there near the commercial areas trying to catch shoplifters. I get it, but we have to accept it. Report writing is part of the job. And when you accept that and you don't get stressed out every time you have to do a report, and you understand the crime's going to happen no matter where you are or what you're doing. I mean, for the most part, it's going to be there. You're not going to miss anything. I mean, really, when you think about it. So we got to get the stuff done. So that leads me to my first point. Take a deep breath, and accept it for what it is. And then when it's time to gather information,
how say when.
Obviously, you want to take your time, making sure you have all the details and as much information as you can gather, no matter what incident or crash scene you have shown up at and are getting the information. And when you've left the scene and it's time to work on the report, my advice is if you're not too busy and there is time to start it, then get started on it. Procrastination is never healthy. Like, nobody in the self-help field or the mental health field, I've never heard anyone recommend procrastination. So if you can get it done, pull off into a parking lot where you can see around you very well and make sure no one can sneak up on you, really, or go to the police department, which I'm not a big fan of going there because there's too many officers and they just want to talk and you'll get distracted. So I'm all about, if you can do the report in the laptop in the car, then knock it out there, but get it done. And in my opinion, don't check out of service and have all the other calls put on other officers when you could be a team player and take some calls. Even though you're trying to work on a report, you need to stay available, in my opinion, so that you can still be a good asset for your team. However, if it's something you absolutely have to get done, give a quick phone call to another officer or two and say, hey, can you look out for me? I got to get this report done. If they give me a call, then can you take it? I mean, hopefully you're on a good team and there'll be some officers that don't mind. I was on great teams and we never had an issue with that. So when you start the report,
Stop humming that song.
after mentally accepting that you have to do it, you're in a good spot, and you've given the team a heads up, if need be, that you need to get it done, no matter what software your department uses for reports, go left to right. You can't write down a bunch of stuff on your notepad and then you start filling in blocks as you come across that information in your notepad. Like, if you wrote down the name and then the address and then someone's date of birth, because that's when you remembered to ask it, but the report has name, date of birth, address, then you need to look at the information in your notepad and type it as you're coming across it in the report. I hope that makes sense. Go left to right, because if you start going from block to random block to up and down and right to left and left to right and diagonally, then you're going to really be at risk for skipping over information and not going back to a block that needs to be completed. Now, I know you can hit, well, at least at the department where I work, you can hit that IBR button and it'll tell you where you missed information, but that just takes a lot of time. If you missed it originally, you could have covered it if you would have just gone left to right, top to bottom. The next thing is, it's absolutely imperative for you to take your time. I had to learn this the hard way. There were times when I rushed through a report, particularly at the end of shift. There was one time I actually had to come back into work and finish it. It was an arrest report, and I had to come in and fix it because I was off for the next 3-4 days, and yeah, had to get it done. If I would have just taken my time, guess what? I wouldn't have had to go back into work. And it was very frustrating having to go back in, but nobody to blame except me. So take your time. Deep breathing helps a lot. The next thing is, stop making narratives so wordy. Simple, plain English that everyone understands is just fine. In my new book, 101 Useful Tips for Rookie Police Officers, I list out some phrases that police use a lot, like verbal altercation and physical altercation. You mean an argument and a fight? Or I was trying to ascertain the information. You mean get the information? The person appeared to be moving in a hurried fashion. You mean they were walking fast or running? See what I mean? Just plain English that doesn't confuse anybody reading it, or if you have to be in court one day, looking at your report and reading your narrative to a jury or referencing it, you'll use language that doesn't confuse and frustrate them. The narratives don't have to be fancy, but they do need to cover the details necessary for the investigation or the crash report, which is not a lot typically. And here's what you must do after you type up a narrative. Obviously, you're thinking proofreading. But what my AP English teacher in 12th grade taught me that I'll never forget, even though I did horrible in that course, one thing I'll never forget was that she said, read your work out loud. So that's what I advise you to do. Read your narrative out loud. That's another reason not to go back to the police department to do your reports if you can help it, and do it in the car, particularly if you're on patrol. And that way you can read aloud and you won't get constantly distracted. You can be focused in on the report. But reading it aloud helps you to catch mistakes, because if you get to a sentence and you stumble on that sentence, you can pick up on how you can reword it so it flows that much better. And you can catch your mistakes along the way. I can tell you right now, I told my rookies to do that. One in particular, he told me ahead of time on the very first day of training, he said, I'm not a good writer, but I'll do my best. And he did do his best, but boy, did we have some fun reading aloud. And if he's watching this video, I'm sure he's laughing a lot right now. All right, back on track. Do not forget to do spell check in the narratives. And then my last piece of advice, which you can obviously dive into reports a lot more. There are actual classes for this that go on for hours. I just want to hit some highlights that helped me during my career. But last but not least is, if you have a question about how to list something, say in a crash report, or how to word something in a narrative, or what information could help in addition to the basic information for the investigation, whatever the case is, my advice, call your senior officers, leave the sergeants alone. Because when you bug your sergeant, they're already busy enough as is, typically. But when you bug the sergeant, they're going to start to think you can't really do a lot on your own without some supervision. And there are some things you have to let the sergeant know. Don't get me wrong. And there are some things you have to ask them directly. Don't get me wrong. But if they don't hear from you a lot during the shift because you're asking senior officers their opinion, or you're picking their brain, that's a good thing. Keep the sergeant happy. Leave them alone. And sometimes, I can't tell you how many times, like particularly when I was new in the first 5 years, I would pick up the phone, ask the question, and then I realized the answer while I was asking the question. Bug your senior officers, all right? That's just some little advice, my opinion. If your sergeant's like, yeah, call me all you want, that's on them. Listen to them, all right? Obviously, it's a very challenging time to work as a police officer. So there are little things that you can do that mount up to big results on reducing your stress and helping your job efficiency. I care about you. Take care of yourselves out there, and may God bless.